Welcome to the City of Opa-locka virtual workshop. We call this meeting to discuss our event policies. I would like to welcome everyone to our workshop. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Taylor.
Here.
Vice Mayor Williams.
Here.
Mayor Pygott.
I'm here. Madam Attorney, could you review the protocols that govern this virtual meeting?
Pursuant to Resolution 21-9835 passed by the City Commission on January 27, 2021, the City of Opa-locka may conduct public workshop meetings without having a quorum of its members physically present or at any specific location and utilizing communications media technology such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 120.545B2 of the Florida statutes. The members of this meeting have been announced by the roll call. An opportunity was given to the public to address this commission by sending an email to the city clerk at publiccomments@opalockafl.gov, and the clerk will announce all public comments at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Taylor, you want to lead us in invocation?
Sure. God, we thank you for bringing us together one more time in your name. God, we thank you for everything that you've done for this city thus far and the strides that we have made. God, we ask that you come upon this meeting that we might do the will of your people. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
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 Could you lead us in invocation, pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, could you review the agenda protocols and the protocols for public comments, and let us know if we have any public comments for this meeting.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So the members of the public were provided the opportunity to participate virtually by registering on the City of Opa-locka's website at www.opalockafl.gov. And at this time, Mr. Mayor, there are no public comments.
All right, let's move on to our discussion item, City of Opa-locka Special Events Policy. This is our second meeting, and we do have a policy in front of us that was updated by the manager. So, Mr. Manager, you want to introduce this events policy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had Mr. Anthony prepare a nice PowerPoint, and he will be doing the presentation tonight. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, Bob Anathan. I'd like to take you through a brief overview of the special events policy. By way of background, I assisted the Parks and Recreation Director in pulling this together, and I drew the responsibility of packaging, and consequently, I also drew the privilege of presenting. So we'll go through it. It's a 30-page document. I'm not going to go through all the pages in detail. I'm going to hit the highlights, and hopefully that's enough to get the discussion started. If I can take over the screen, see if I can make this thing work. And okay, I think I'm almost there. By way of feedback, does everybody now see the front page, the cover page? It's on everybody's
Yes.
screen? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, to go through it very quickly. The policy is on the first page. In looking at it, it probably was not done as artfully as it could be, but the important thing is not so much the statement of the policy, but all the procedures that follow behind it. So that's where we're going to spend our time. There we go. These special events categories, the way the Parks and Rec director and I broke it up, it breaks down into the various categories. There's going to be city-produced events, and then there are other entity-produced events. For those of you who are familiar with the Pareto 80-20 rule, this is actually going to be the 90-10 rule. The city-produced events only take up about 3+ pages in the 30-page document, but that is where all the focus is going to be. The other entity-produced events that I have at the bottom of the screen, that is, to use an extreme case, when the circus comes to town and they want to use the Shabandi playing fields to set up their tents and so forth. I'll go through each one of these. As I said, the majority of the package relates to the last. The more important items for your consideration tonight certainly are in the first 3 pages. Very quickly, within city-produced events, something I've called annual budget events. It's a little awkward expression, but those are the dozen or so events that will show up in the budget book each year. And I'll go through what we're going to do about it. Second category, we've borrowed this concept from others, and it's offered up as an option for your consideration. You want to do it. What other municipalities have done is they have set up a secondary budget, which each member of the commission is allocated a fixed amount for the following year special events. And we'll go through that in some detail. I'm going to hold off comment for a moment. Within the mayor commissioner initiated events, really 2 major categories. Where city resources are required, which is going to be the majority of them. And then there's a secondary category you can see near the bottom of the screen. City resources not required. And that relates to the types of things that were discussed the other night, such as the event for employees that's coming up shortly. And I think there's also meant to be some sort of a event in a church in the not too distant future. Spend a little bit of time on that. So those are the major categories that we're going to address. And as I said, we're going to address them pretty quickly. I'm going to take you through the things that show up in the budget book each year. The intended way that this will progress is May of each year, the Parks and Rec director will present to the commission a recommended schedule of events for next year. We'll identify the events that he's thinking of, the cost of each of them, and the audience for which it's going to be intended. Now, when I say costs, in some cases, some of the more sophisticated cities right now go through a full cost allocation, try to determine what the staff costs and all the in-house costs are going to be. I would urge, for the purpose, at least for the next year, until finance gets through some of the things that they're working on so that it can be done more sophisticatedly, we only talk about cost in terms of third-party costs, the things that are going to be bought, the external goods and services that are going to be bought. So my recommendation is for what you'll see in May is the costs that are going to be assigned are going to be those strictly for third-party costs. As what is intended to come out of it would be the second bullet is out of the presentation of what is contemplated for next year will be specific guidance from the commission as to those events that they would like to see within the budget discreetly identified and the cost which should be assigned to each one of those. From there, we get into how is that actually going to carry out once we get into next year. And to really hit a couple of high points, you got a special events coordinator within the Parks and Rec department. And you also have a special events committee, which is composed of all of the major departments who would play a role in planning for and ensuring that each event was properly carried out. That would include representatives from Public Works. It would include representation from the public information function. Certainly would include the police department to ensure safety and so forth. Could also include financial input to the extent that some analytic work has to be done. And they will take each of the events that are in the budget for next year. They're going to oversee the planning of it, going to make sure it's done safely, make sure it has the proper promotion, and do everything possible to make sure that it's a successful event. I will point out that this step is consistent with every one of the other special events we're going to look at, except for those events that don't have any city resources. Another major event that comes out of that is once the event is done, the Parks and Recreation Director is going to evaluate it to find out what worked well, and what things require improvement. And of course, always with any of these events, going to be looking for partners and sponsors to broaden the interest in terms of who might show up and also help to possibly defray the costs. Okay, so now we're going to get into the ones where we're talking about commissioner-initiated events. When the budget, the recommended schedule for the next year is presented each May, at the same time, the commission will be asked to determine an amount to be allocated for each of the commissioners for mayor commissioner initiated events. And again, that will be folded into the budget and should be an item that does not require further attention during the budget review itself. After that, if the mayor or a commissioner chooses to initiate an event, that information will be provided to the city manager's office, and then that will be delegated to the special event coordinator and also the special event special event committee, and they will go through the steps they would for any event to make sure the event is conducted well, has the proper promotion, and is safe for anybody who participates in it. And as was mentioned before, at the end of these events, again, the Parks and Recreation Director would do an assessment to determine what went well and what not went well. These would be from the allocations that were established at the initial budget time. There could be another category called unbudgeted, and all that means is that the mayor or a particular commissioner chose to do something else. He or she had already used up their allocation. In this case, it would have to go back, since it's unbudgeted, I would have to go back to the commission for approval, and it would also include a budget amendment to get the funding. Once that's approved, it would go back into the normal process for providing a special event. For the commissioner-initiated events where no city resources are required, again, along the lines of these employee luncheon this week, conducted later this week, and so forth. All that's required here is that the city manager is made aware of the intent to conduct the event. The special events coordinator has a very minor role. The coordinator will ensure that it doesn't conflict with anything else that's scheduled within the city. It's going to take a look at the promotion, make sure the promotion of that event is as good as it could be. And the only other thing the special events coordinator is going to do is to ensure that any and all officials are made aware of it so that there's no surprises later on. That basically is where the heart of all of the commission activity is. This goes into the other entity produced events. This is about 25 pages out of the 30 pages of the policy that's been prepared. And I'm not going to go through the 30 pages. I'm just going to roughly, very quickly, just pass over the things that are addressed here, because it has been borrowed very extensively from what other municipalities have done. It's very well thought out. It provides a very comprehensive set of checks and balances to ensure that whenever a third party wants to do something, all of the proper requirements and so forth are fully laid out. And I'm just going to very quickly go through them right here. It identifies responsibilities so there's no confusion as to who's responsible for what. It puts in place a very thorough planning process, once again involving your special events committee and your special events coordinator. Make sure that it's done with complete safety. It ensures it's done with compliance with state, county, and city regulations. Make sure that the city is compensated for all expenses that's going to occur. Make sure that insurance is in place to minimize the city's liability. It ensures the steps are in place to ensure that the city's assets and property are fully protected. It has deposit requirements, strict lead time, and just to give you a sense of how comprehensive it is, takes you through all the steps that are required to complete an application, discusses all the various permits that may be involved in it, gets into what has to be done if you're going to have alcoholic beverages, also gets into all the steps that are required if there are going to be vendors on site providing food service. Has a provision in there to ensure that if there's going to be any question of open flames or other issues raising fire safety. A set of procedures are followed to cover that. Also looks at the possibility of having to station emergency medical personnel. Once again, make sure that all the proper insurance is covered for vehicles, for alcoholic beverage, and just general liability. Address the sanitary requirements for food preparation, bathrooms, ensures a very rigorous cleanup, and even covers what's involved in amusements. So that's all of this stuff is buried in the 25 pages. It's there. I don't think, from what I know of the city's history, it's going to be used extensively, but when the situation does arrive, it's going to be available. It can be broken out and provides very thorough guidance as to what needs to be done in these events. So in closing, the majority of it is in the city-produced events that I discussed previously, and I am ready to answer any questions that may come of it or be responsive to any, well, leave it at that, any questions that may come of it. So that completes my presentation.
All right, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Manager?
No, sir.
All right, I'd like to open the floor for discussion. I'd also like to acknowledge Commissioner Burke on the line, and also the most amazing room shirt I've ever seen in my life. I like that. So with that, the floor is open for discussion.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. If we can, and good afternoon, Mr. Anthony, thank you for the presentation and for at least, breaking it down for us to be able to see that larger policy in chunks. Was wondering if you can go back to page 5. Actually, I believe it's page 4 of the presentation.
Yes, ma'am. This one.
Okay. Wait, it's the page. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, the third bullet, and maybe you said it already. I don't know if I heard it. The special events coordinator, is this a new position or is this someone that we're tapping that's already an employee and they're going to oversee, they're going to be the coordinator?
I can answer that. Maybe the Parks and Rec director might choose to answer it since it would be an employee working for him.
For now, that special event coordinator will be me. I will primarily oversee, the coordination of the events through the Parks Department.
Okay. So, and then the committee, so will the coordinator be over the committee? Or are these two separate entities? There's a coordinator and then there's a committee.
The coordinator is part of the committee.
The coordinator is a part of the committee.
Yeah. It'll be made up of the different department heads of the committee of the city.
And in the absence of the Parks and Rec director would be the chairman of the committee.
Okay. So is the special, because I know there's two separate things on the table. So that's the part and I think I was still unclear the last time, and maybe I can get a little bit more clarity. In terms of the allocation, when we talk about commission, what's the role of the special events coordinator / committee when it comes to commission events? Is it all entail the same process?
If I may, what I try to do is differentiate between when resources are required and when resources are not required. When resources not required, such as the luncheon that I believe is going to occur tomorrow, the only role that the special events coordinator will play is after being notified from the city manager that this event has been intended to be scheduled. The only role that the special coordinator plays, as far as special events coordinator plays, is just to confirm it doesn't conflict with anything else going in the city. It takes a look at what's the promotion plan is to make sure that it's being properly promoted, and just make sure that all other commissioners and department heads are aware that this event's going to take place. So for this type of stuff, it's a very minimal role.
Okay, and what does that mean, verify proper promotion? What does that mean?
It just takes a look at who has been made aware that this event is going to occur. And if the word has not gotten out sufficiently for people who it's intended for to take advantage of it, make recommendations as to what might be done to get further promotion of it, be it on the city website or by some other means.
So will the special events coordinator, and that could, this in between you, Mr. Anthony and Mr. Patterson, anyone can jump in, and does that mean if I did not properly promote my event, will the special events coordinator then roll up their sleeves and give me a hand to promote that event? Is that what I'm hearing?
Make a recommendation is the intention. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And if we can go back to the slide before, the budgeted slide, yeah, that's the one. Okay, so if I'm hearing this correctly, we're going to budget each commission member a portion, I guess, an equal amount of money to put on events. And if I run out of money, then I would then have to go to the commission, ask for approval, and ask for if I can borrow some of other commissioners' monies from their pot.
Well, it would be a budget amendment from whatever source. You would not be dependent on the other managers to pony up some money to make it available to you. I mean, there are a lot of budget amendments can be sourced from anywhere. It just requires a budget amendment to make sure the project is funded properly.
So, and I'm only saying because I've been here, I think I'm going on 3 months now, maybe 4. And I've not seen every commissioner put on events. So my concern though is if I then have to now go to the commission and ask for approval, how now do I not know? And that's what actually scares me about this part is everybody doesn't have the same zeal as I know that I do to put on events, and it's very clear. And what scares me about this is if I have to get commission approval, they may say, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. And that part is, that's a little, I don't know.
Vice Mayor, if
I
I
have
may.
some trepidation about that.
Vice Mayor, if I may, this process does not exist at the moment. This has been borrowed from another city or a couple cities.
I know it has. I read it. I know it has. It has from Miramar.
Yes, exactly. And it's a proposal, and it just says that the mayor and each commissioner will have X dollars where you all will decide what X is during the budget preparation process. And if you overuse your allocation, then at the moment it's not budgeted. It just doesn't say, it just says that we've got to find the money from somewhere. And since it's not been approved to do a budget amendment, the commission has to approve it. So that for that reason, it goes back to the commission. And
no, I get that part, but
Okay.
again, that part gives me trepidation because, you know, when I brought an item forth, there was, you know, why not that money go somewhere else? So I don't know, you know, I'm still, let me flush that one out.
okay.
And maybe let me see if other commissioners, hopefully we're in an area that we can hear and let them speak.
If I may just give you one final point on all it says is there's no budget, and we need to do a budget amendment from somewhere to fund the project. So I'm trying to boil it down to its bare essence.
Mr. Mayor?
All right, are you done, Commissioner, Vice Mayor Williams?
Yes, I'm done for now.
All right, Commissioner Taylor?
Okay, I just want to make sure I have a proper understanding. I'm with Vice Mayor, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So there will be, let's just say every commission gets $1 for the year to do events. Once we can do events as long as we maintain under that dollar. We don't need to ask permission through the commission, this, that, and the third. But once we run out of that dollar and we need more money, at that point is when we have to bring it forth to commission. Is that what I'm hearing, Mr. Anderson?
Yes, sir, because it basically says at this point, there's no budget for it. The only way there can be a budget for it is if the commission agrees to a budget amendment. So de facto, they're agreeing to the project itself.
And then my next question is, I saw the word city resources.
Yep.
Now, city resources, does that include staff?
Yes, sir.
So in other words, even if an unbudgeted special event requiring city resources. So if I just say I have a barbecue and I want to use staff, I need to get permission for that from the commissioner.
I
think that's where we're unclear. The wording is a little muddy.
Okay, if I can elaborate on it. What I said is if I would recommend for the next year at least to define cost as external purchase of goods and services. If you are going to have a cookout, if you will, and it's at no cost, there's nothing that has to be bought. Maybe you're going to pick up the food or whatever. City's not going to pick up the food. So at that point, it reverts back to this one where I understand what you're saying. You're saying the resources is maybe confusing.
Yeah, it's the word city resources.
Yeah. Well, maybe I should have said city. I should have possibly said city expenditures rather than city resources.
Okay, and I preface this by saying I'm not picking on Vice Mayor. She's having the event tomorrow here. Like, let's just say if that event was after hours, and staff were participating, would that be considered city resources?
That goes back to the point I tried to make before, where the more sophisticated cities try to pick up all of the in-house expenses. And I would urge us not to do that for the moment and keep it simple. And if it's going to take overtime, but all other expenses, there's no other expense that's going to hit the city, I would deem that to be a no-cost event for at least the next year.
So payroll will has nothing to do with the fixed amount for the event budget per commissioner.
That is my recommendation, subject to approval. And again, that would be a short-term thing. I think that once finances gets a chance to settle out a little bit, that can be done with a little more finesse. And yes, we probably should include it, but I would not.
Yeah, I think that needs to be added because the wording is, because if staff is going to eat up the budget, then where do we?
Well, within the policy, I did state that at least as the policy is written now, cost will be only those external consumptions of goods and services requiring payments to an outside party. But I think your point was where it says city resources.
It's the city resources part.
You want to change to city expenses. And I understand that.
Or even use the wording that you said, outside expenditures, or whatever, however you want to put it. Okay. So it doesn't look like it's including city staff, because a lot of our stuff will utilize police, will utilize, for example, we had the talk show thing and Nelson was there. So would that be, you know what I'm saying, Mr. Anderson? So maybe if you change the wording.
Understood. Noted.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Burke.
Well, you know what? We're right back to where we started from. What determined that we would use Miramar's event policies when, have we looked at North Miami? Have we looked at North Miami Beach? places that's closer to our city, who determined that we would take Miramar and use Miramar's special event policy? From what I understood, we were supposed to look at a number of cities and take pieces from the parts of cities that we wanted to take. Now we're here with Miramar's special event policy taken from Miramar. That's not what I thought this was going to be about. I thought we were supposed to look at everybody's special event policies and pull parts, not go and get Miramar and try to revamp Miramar's special event policy to fit Opa-locka. Where did this come from?
Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Commissioner, what we took from Miramar was only two things. We took from them all of the things that are done for external events. And again, that is probably going to be used maybe 5% of the time. The only other thing that we took from Miramar is the ability to allocate to each commissioner some amount of money for those events that the mayor or particular commissioner has an interest in. The rest of it was just developed, trying to be responsive to the operational audit. I had felt that it was a reasonably firm structure to give the commission control over the special events they see. So the majority of the heart of this, which is the commission control, was not taken from Miramar other than the concept of the allocation to the mayor and each commissioner of a fixed amount for things that they in particular wanted to see happen. So this really should not be thought about as having taken the entire Miramar effort and just grafted it onto the city of Opa-locka.
Okay, so Bob, I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson.
Yes, sir.
You did this and not the parks director.
No, sir. We worked on it together. I assisted him. That's what the point.
I'm hearing everything from you, and I'm hearing nothing from the parks director.
Because
so what I'm thinking is, you're the originator of this.
No, sir. The roots of this were in place before the Parks and Rec director even showed up last November. I worked in concert with him. I provided some assistance on pulling the package together. I believe he's fully vested unless he chooses to indicate otherwise.
No, I'm fully vested, Bob.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor.
Vice Mayor Williams.
Yes. So two things. I want to echo the sentiments of Commissioner Burke. I do think that we should look at other cities instead of just one city. We should see our surrounding cities events policy and take, the good from the different policies. Opa-locka, comparing ourselves to Miramar is comparing apples to oranges. We don't have Miramar's budget, nor do we're not even close to their type of, the people that even live in Miramar in terms of numbers. There's way more numbers of people that live in Miramar. So I'm almost sure, and I don't even know, can anybody tell me how many commissioners Miramar has? Does anybody, I don't know, does anybody know that number?
5 commissioners through the mayor.
Oh, 5, and okay, so the same as Opa-locka. Attorney Weeks, yes, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Okay, no, I was just wondering if it was, because I'm sure, Miramar is a much, a larger territory. So I'm sure that, they would have to, get that. And I don't even know, my next question is even, I mean, and I'm questioning Miramar because that's the one that was, you know, that we're looking at. And I don't know if Miramar is the same as Miami Gardens. Is it cut by, you know, councils in terms of area, in terms of, so, but we're not, like, we service the whole entire Opa-locka. There is no like boundary lines of where how we commission. So I don't know if that's the same thing in Miramar. So all those things have to be taken into effect or taken into account when we're, you know, looking at one city. So I would like for us to look at, of course, I, you know, want to solidify a plan, but look at, you know, maybe take a look at one or two other municipalities that look like us, in terms of size. I know there's City of West Park, they're pretty small municipality. I don't know, but I'm just throwing those out to see if there's something in place there. And my next suggestion, and that's just my suggestion, is to actually, I would like to amend this part where there is commission approval for the amendment of the budget. That part does give me trepidation. And again, I'm saying that it's twofold. If I've spent all my pot and my pot is gone, I understand what you were saying, Mr. Anathan, it's not like that, but in the back of my mind, because I could be the commissioner that likes to plan a lot of events and not really keep up with the fact that my kitty is gone, my little pot. And if that pot is gone, then I say, if there are other commissioners that have not totally invested their pot of or allocated budget, then maybe we vote to remove their budget and bring it over to commissioners that want to put on more events. I mean, maybe we take a look at those particular things. Again, 3 months and I'm still waiting. So, you know, that part does give me trepidation. So I personally would like to remove that until I personally can see more events come from the entire board. And when I see that part, I'm okay with putting that back in everyone's lap. But right now, I would like the allocation to come from the city manager's office to allow them to make that determination if the budget for the commissioners need to be amended or not. But I'm not comfortable with that, with the first bullet.
Mr. Mayor, can I address that, please? Vice Mayor, this policy and procedure breaks into two parts. The first 3 pages, if you will, really have to do with the commission's control over the special events to be done in the city. The 25 pages, and the only thing from Miramar that's in here is the fact that they have come up with a concept that says, why not let each commissioner have a dedicated small budget for his or her own special events? So that is the only place that Miramar enters into the whole area that's addressed with commission control of city-produced events. The other 25 pages, yes, that's Miramar. As I said before, we certainly can look at what other people do. It's a very well thought out set of procedures to make sure that the city does not get into any exposures from conducting the programs. So I would ask you to think about this in 2 segments. The portion having to do with the city commission control of the special events, which was created here, not based on Miramar, not based on anybody else, but trying to be responsive to the steps that we think are required to allow the commission to get up front in terms of identifying the special events they want for that year and actually getting that in the budget so that there is some satisfaction. That's exactly what the commission was thinking about. In terms of the unbudgeted things, Again, if we put a budget together and if a commissioner uses up his or her budget, then it's going to require a budget amendment. Now, that may be nothing more than a contribution from another commissioner, but it will require a budget amendment.
Mr. Anthony, earlier you said that, I think I'm getting confused. Earlier you said that we didn't get the majority of the policy, but I'm looking at the policy and almost 25 pages of our policy came directly from Miramar's policy that we looked at. So
Yes, ma'am. I believe
are we
that's
not using Miramar's policy?
No,
That's
ma'am.
what it's looking like.
What? I'm sorry. I obviously miscommunicated.
And,
What I attempted.
This,
Madam, hold on. Because I know we want to go back and forth about policy, which policies that we used. And I want to make sure we bring some clarity to that conversation in regards to this. Is there anything in particular about whatever sections comes from the city of Miramar that needs to be edited and changed?
we are using city of Miramar.
Okay. Hold on, Vice Mayor.
Okay.
And then also, are there any other, because we all have the ability to do research and propose things to staff. Are there any other sections of other cities' policies that we believe will be better suited for the city of Opa-locka? And if so, we can forward that to the city manager's office, Mr. Anathan, for them to put it into whatever they would like. And we can have another meeting in regards to that. Many times, a lot of these policies are kind of standard. So what we're trying to do today is get to a policy that works for us as a city. So we can figure out what parts of the policies doesn't fit with us. And let's propose that just so that we can streamline this conversation.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Taylor.
I think that's where everyone is saying, when it was given to us, you guys gave us two papers, the events policy, and then you gave us backup documentation that came from Miramar. We never got the option of any other municipality that was attached to that, to this information. So the only thing we were able to look at, or was allowed to look at, if you will, was what came from Miramar. So unbeknownst to us, we didn't know that we had the option to look at other municipalities and take away and add to, because it looks like this is what was etched in stone. And we compared it to, as a previous discussion, like they said in the email, the previous discussion from something that happened with, I guess, prior to this new commission from Miramar. So I guess what you're saying is we can add and subtract from other municipalities?
All right. So thank you for bringing that level of clarification. That's part of this, I guess, when we first started, one of the things I advocated for on the agenda was for us to have a public workshop to go over things. And one of those things is the development of policies, so that we all know what it takes to bring a policy to the forefront, and how we can edit it. So I'll give you just a little context to this particular discussion, and move forward with that. Matter of fact, let me go through my spiel about the context for this, and then it will also address that particular situation, because I think some background would be very beneficial to this. So personally, my involvement with events in the city actually started when I was an employee as a city of Opa-locka. And one of the challenges that I heard quite a bit in working was that employees having to show up to events pretty quickly, taken away from their family lives, and also not being paid, compensated for those type of things. And those things resonated with me. And then as a resident, I was involved in mentoring programs and different things. And I wanted to bring something to the city of Opa-locka. And I remember reaching out to Parks to try and, I guess, have an event in Opa-locka, and was basically told that certain facilities couldn't be used because they were being kind of reserved just in case the commission would want to do an event. And then when I got on the commission, I saw that my colleagues at the time would have multiple events like the same, like 3 or 4 backpack giveaways and all these different things. And like toy give. It was just so many events coming together at the same time. It was just like, what's going on? And being a newly elected official, I wanted to do events too. But there wasn't any regulations involved in this, which is why I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because this is much needed. And I'm actually really happy with what's been put together, because it kind of streamlines and gives us some type of guidance, because those guidance wasn't there. And me coming on as a big change agent, wanting to change things up, kind of being the lone wolf, the events wasn't really an opportunity for me because people basically denied me a lot of resources being a commissioner. So then coming to mayor, and I'm breaking these points because I want to tease out each one of them as it relates to why this is important. That would have events, and as a ceremonial leader of this city, there's an expectation for residents, for everybody, colleagues, for us to be at events. And there were events will be happening, and literally we wouldn't know. And we'll show up to an event and not even know when to show up, what's the agenda, and it was very confusing. And then a few months into being mayor, the operational audit came out. And the operational audit literally clearly defined that events was a big source of mismanagement, of fiscal responsibility, employees, and all those things. And I refrained from doing all events personally until this events policy was put in place. So with the new manager coming on board, a new attorney, one of the things that I asked for the development of an events policy, and with the legislative aid. So we asked the legislative aid, the attorney, and the manager to do some research, develop that policy. And there was a few cities legislation that was submitted in development of that policy. City of Miramar was one, I believe City of Miami Gardens, and we did some cursory research with others. And we didn't get it to a point where it can actually be presented. So these policies that we have right now comes from the culmination of a lot of that research, or trying to look at best practices around the city and to address some specific things. Number one, how we utilize resources, city resources, facilities, and staff time, so that there isn't a practice where whole facilities are just not utilized and residents can't utilize them because if and when elected officials would do that. Two, we give for the staff to be able to plan out their lives and be able to know when events are coming up and when they got to take off for their families and all that to move this forward. So, and then lastly, the operational audit, which measures that fiscal impact. If you look at the operational audit, we'll see a lot of recommendations where they detail how we were over budget many times. I mean, money wasn't accounted for. So what this policy does, it takes from a few cities in order to basically put in place those processes. And there are a lot of changes that I see from this policy we have here in regards to City of Miramar, City of Miami Gardens. So that's where we are right now. So to address your concern, Commissioner Teller, as elected officials, every single one of us have the right and the ability to call on our legislative aide, our city attorney, our city manager, and also us personally to pull and do research and present it to management and have them and the attorney have them, I guess, put it together in what works for the city. So with this policy, I would strongly encourage all of us, if it hasn't been done, we can pause and do the research to present those things so that we can talk about it in a way in which we take from all these different cities. The key things that I personally want to make sure that we do is that we account for city resources, because we are still under financial oversight, respect for staff and employees' times, the proper acknowledgement so that all of us know what's going on, and then 4, that it is properly promoted, so that every single person in events has that promotion schedule to maximize involvement and engagement for all of our residents. So that's what I would like, and I do have a few questions to clarify on the city resources piece, but I'll pause right there, Commissioner Teller, did I answer your question?
Yes and no. Okay, Mr. Mayor, I understand. I just don't want it. I don't know how to say this without saying, okay, this policy, was it written by you or was it written by Mr. Bob? Because it sounds like this policy is based on what you deem was a negative experience when you first got in office or when you, whatever. So I don't want it to look like, I support progression, but I just don't want it to look like that or come across that we as a commission are being punished because of your experiences of the past, okay, or what you deem were negative experiences of the past. So, and we were never told or informed coming on that the events policy, that we could have a hand in creating this events policy. And Miramar is what was dropped in our lap, because yes, I love events. Vice Mayor loves to have events. I love doing and creating, but we were never told or informed, because you said the legislative aid had a hand in it, Parks and Rec had a hand in it, you had a hand in it, but what about the rest? There's 5 of us that sit on this board, but we were never informed that we could have a hand in it. So it comes across. I'll just stop because I don't want it to look like I'm being negative or picking on you, but it's the way it looks. It just don't look like.
Mr. Mayor,
it don't look right. It just don't look right.
That's good to know. Commissioner Burke, and then I'll respond.
Mr. Mayor, I've been in this city for several years, and sure, there was times when we've had back-to-back events, but to my knowledge, and I was close to the commission, there's never been a time when an employee had to work an event and they didn't want to work an event. And with all due respect, Mr. Mayor, from the time you became a commissioner to the time you was mayor, Mr. Mayor, you never attended any event in this city. Mr. Mayor, every event you put on in Miami Gardens or someplace else. So, no, hear me out. I've been here. I've been in this city, and I've been very involved in this city. And I'm appalled at some of the things that you're saying about the events policy in this city, as if our Parks and Recreation Department wasn't doing anything. We were making employees work when they didn't want to work. Yes, we had a lot of events. But Mr. Mayor, as far as you saying that you couldn't put on anything, Mr. Mayor, we had events and you never even showed up. So don't sit here and seem like you was here from day one and you attended all the events, or you didn't want to attend any events, Mr. Mayor. Sure, we need an events policy. Yes, but don't make it look like our Parks and Recreation Department, we had no plans. We had, maybe the Oversight Committee was thinking about when the commissioners went out, most of the commissioners, when they had events, they went out and they got donations. Now, a lot of times they would use staff, okay? But as far as staff not knowing an event, and all the events was posted ahead of time. So there was nothing impromptu, Mr. Mayor, about the events that went on in the city. And the biggest event we ever had was Arabian Nights. And we hadn't had Arabian Nights. I remember one year we had a 4th of July extravaganza. Then another time we had a toy giveaway in the park at Ingram Park. But all of those were mostly privately funded. And the only thing the city had to incur was employees cleaning up. So don't try to make it look like the city didn't know what they was doing all of these years, because that's a slap in the face to the prior commission. And I won't sit here and do that because I know better. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Anathan, and then I'll respond.
Thank you. Commissioner, I'd like to apologize. I've let this thing jump the rails. I would urge you to think of what was presented tonight in two pieces. Pages 1 through 3 address city-produced events. Pages 4 through 30 are external events. Yes, they were taken from Miramar. Miramar does not enter into pages 1 through 3. Pages 1 through 3 were put together under what we understood the following directions. The commission wanted to play an active role in setting up a schedule of events that they were satisfied with, get it into the budget and get it in early, and so there are no questions, so nothing got lost in the review process. The second thing that the pages 1 through 3 are designed to do, and again, it has nothing to do with Miramar, is to make sure that there's an organization in place that will take an event and make sure that all the bases are covered so the event is done successfully and achieves the commission's objectives. So Miramar does not play a role in the front portion at all, other than the fact we did take from them the ability for each commissioner and the mayor to have individual events that may be of interest to them. If there is discomfort with what we've taken from Miramar for the third-party events, i.e. the circus coming to town and using the Shabandi Field, that was fine. But I would ask you to think about whether the first 3 pages address the ability for the commission to specify what they want to see in the way of events up front, and whether it adequately puts in place an organization that's going to make sure that those events occur in a very professional, well-executed, and fiscally responsible way. So I apologize for letting this thing become strictly a Miramar discussion when Miramar really has nothing to do with the 90% of the policy that really was intended to give you the ability to control the special events. So I'd ask you to make that separation in your thought process.
Thank you. And I also want to apologize if I have, I guess, using my personal experience as an example of implications, may have derailed this conversation to think in that regard. As I was literally just using things that I've been a part of and I've seen as a context to the implications. So please forgive that thing, and I will try my best to limit those type of comments. But with that, in terms of Commissioner Taylor, your concerns about the optics and how it looks and all those things, and even the information about Miramar. Literally all of that last conversation, there was talk about where this stuff comes from. requested to make sure that all the information about the events policy be provided to everyone, so that everyone understands the back end about it. That's literally the only part where I think Miramar even comes into play, is so that all that information that was received, everyone else has, so that everyone knows and can bring in that information. But Commissioner Taylor, I wholeheartedly, yes, for every single legislation, we have the ability to propose ideas, propose other examples, and play a part in that. And this workshop is the place for us to bring that together. So that's the, yeah, does that answer you? Does that clear up the clarity?
Yeah, yes, for the most part, yes.
All right. All right. So let's one of the things I want to go into is about the resources aspect of it. Because I've heard different variations about the resources. So is it city resources or city expenditures? Because I'm thinking of expenditures as something that is paid, and city resources as facilities, as I guess Zoom platforms, things of that nature. Like, are those considered city resources or expenditures? Could you help break that down?
Yes, sir. I've learned my lesson on that one. Should not have said resources, should have said city expenditures.
All right. And I understand we are in a financial crisis. And due to that, you say that we do not want to get into, I guess, looking at staff times because the finance department is, I guess, overwhelmed. Is that what I'm hearing?
What I'm saying is that's a level of sophistication that I would encourage you to not take into account for the first year. It's never been done before. The budget has always been the third-party expenditures. It's a convenient way to get through another year. To do a full cost allocation in terms of all city resources, rent, staff time, so forth, electricity, water, it's a little bit challenging. I don't think it's a nice thing to do, but I think the city can go a year without trying to get to that level of sophistication. I had urged that it only be third-party expenses.
All right. So is that, because I don't see that reflected in the policy. I see that it just simply says not to look at staff or resources. I see that on page of our agenda packet, page 7, page 2 of the policies and procedures, under special events costs. It specifically says that although city staff were required to support nearly all special events and should be utilized judiciously for budgeting purposes, no effort will be made to allocate the cost of staff to support into the cost of special events when comparing costs to the approved budget for the event. That part I am concerned with, because it seems like it's in opposition to the operational audit, where they specifically asked for us to account for the impact of these events. So I'm wondering, like, why would we propose something that's not in alignment with what people say we wasn't doing right?
Mr. Mayor, what page are you reading from?
Page 7 of the agenda packet,
Okay.
page 2 of the special events policies and procedures. It's like there's 3 bullets and then 2 paragraphs. It's the paragraph that starts with special events costs, and it starts with the second line, although.
I see it.
So yeah, that's my question.
Understood. I think that most cities, when they talk about the cost, usually go the easier route and just look at the bills they're going to have to pay for either goods and services. It's doable, but what it says, if you really want to put that discipline in place right now, is that when the Parks and Recreation Director makes a presentation in May as to the proposed events for the coming year, really going to have to take a very extremely thorough analysis and try and figure out how many people are going to be involved, how much electricity is going to be used, how much water is going to be used. It's not an easy thing to do, and my recommendation is to walk before we run.
Okay. All right. So then if that's the case, then I will propose that we edit that language to put in that time limit. So that's a part of it. And or put in language to say that any events outside of the approved budget will require that level of detail.
Would you include the commissioner and mayor initiated events as budgeted or unbudgeted?
So from what I'm looking at this policy, this will be a part of that events, I guess.
The budget.
Well, events. So yeah, that will be a part of the budget. However, but actually that's a good point, because what if we decide to do a large scale event that requires five police officers, and in addition to those that are going around the city, which would incur overtime costs for those police officers. So yeah, I think that there needs to be some language that does account for staff time as a part. Like on electricity and water, I can understand, like that's going very, very deep. But at the very least, I think it is important to account for that, because that's usually the largest part and also the most difficult.
Mr. Mayor, I have a quick question.
Okay, go ahead, Vice Mayor Williams, and then Commissioner Burke.
I have a quick question, Mr. Mayor. My question is, okay, are we talking about two different budgets? The first time when this was presented by Mr. Anathan and also by Mr. Patterson, there's a parks budget where under the parks budget, we were told the large scale events come through that budget. So are you talking about the same budget that you're proposing the commissioners, that budget that we plan our events, that we do the proposals that you're saying now through that budget? Or are you proposing the large scale events through the parks budget? When you say we need, if an event needs 5 police officers, are you saying the commission events, or are you saying the larger scale Opa-locka events?
I'm saying all events, period. And what I mean by that is that when we plan for our events, we plan to account for how staff utilize, because at the end of the day, it does take time. Like, so parks and recreation staff have programs and activities they will be running standard. And as a part of those parks and recreation activities, a standard run, from what I understand, what it's saying is that they will also have a list of events that they will also do as a city. Now, the events that we do would be on top of that standard events. So, which if it's let's say a barbecue, like Commissioner Taylor brought up, we should be taking into account, okay, somebody from Public Works got to probably prepare and clean up behind that. Most likely, depending on how large the barbecue is, there are going to be a certain number of police, and those should be taken into consideration. Now, the budget aspect, I can't really speak to that, because even now, one of the first things that the Financial Oversight Board did was to remove the budget for special events. So that's why we don't have it right now. Like, that's why there hasn't been events, because they literally wiped that out from the commission as the first and foremost. So when we start to have events, then as long as there's a fiscal analysis and it fits within the budget, like, hey, to me, it don't really matter.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Burke.
You know, I think we started getting ahead of ourselves, because I think first off, if we're doing a workshop, we need to sit down amongst ourselves and try to decide what yearly events are we planning on having. We know we no longer have Arabian Nights. That was one of our big events. Then what it behooves us to sit down as a commission and decide what type of yearly events are we planning on having. And then we sit down and we go through those events and we set them up throughout the year. And I think we can get a better understanding for what we're trying to do. But as it stands right now, there are no events. There are no events planned. And we're sitting here talking about the special events policy. And I can see, okay, if we want to bring the circus into town, yes, sure. The circus going to need police officers, but that's going to be an outside event. We're talking about the city commission sitting down, planning events for the year. Let's sit down and say, hey, are we going to bring back Arabian Nights? Are we gonna do something for Easter? Are we gonna do something for Christmas? Are we gonna do something for back to school? Then I think we can much better handle this if we knew what events we were talking about. Thank you.
I think Mr. Anthony, you want to address that?
Yeah, just because there's a little bit of confusion, I think, at least on the part of maybe the vice mayor. Special events is any time that you have something that the public's invited to. So a special event would be the lighting of the Christmas tree. Those are in fact reflected in the Parks and Recreation budget now. The intent was to have the Parks and Rec director come forward in May, make an offering as to what he thought was appropriate, have you all respond. Commissioner Burks wants a workshop. That's an equally satisfying way to do it. But the point is, anytime you have an event where the public has been invited, such as the Christmas tree lighting, that is one of the items that eventually will end up in the Parks and Recreation budget. In regard to the commission-initiated events, that may be in the Parks and Recreation budget just as a lump sum, or it might be in the commission budget. That's, it's going to be somewhere. But the point is that special events don't have to be mega events to qualify. And the comment on the circus coming to town, I was being a little bit flip on that, but that really is a third-party event and really not the heart of what we tried to convey in pages 1 through 3 of the policy.
So, and also Commissioner Burke, what you just said is exactly what what Mr. Anathan talked about us doing. We're setting this policy so that what you're saying actually happens. That once the policy is in place, we will all come together, parks and us and ourselves will come together and we'll propose a list of events for the year. And then we'll decide upon which ones we want to do in terms of fiscal impact. So that's actually what we're doing, but we got to put the policy. And also the main impetus for us doing this is because we're under financial oversight and we're part of this operational audit. And we literally just had a call last week with management and all with the operational auditors saying they're going to come in and be here over the next 5 to 7 months. And they're going to be looking at all of our, how we've done with this. So getting this policy in place now, make sure that we're fulfilling that. And this ideal of the city of Opa-locka operations are off and dissolving city, like we can handle that. So that's why we're doing this now, so that we can do our part as a commission to address this operational finding and do those events. So it's part of the steps to get to what you're talking about, Commissioner Burke. You got me?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Taylor.
Okay, in regards to the special events costs, when you were talking about, I think we was on the same page about the bulk of the budget coming from staff and the money that we use to pay them during the event. But Mr. Anathan, his proposal was for the first year. The first year, we don't get that detail as far as the payroll and the lights and the water. Is that right, Mr. Anathan?
Yes, sir.
So there will be,
That was my recommendation. And if I could take a moment just to amplify on it a little bit further. I get involved in special events. I get paid the same amount. It doesn't cost the city anything. Something else may not get done. Equally so, if you use police on their regular scheduled time, does not cost the city any additional money. Yes, you can do a full cost allocation to really understand it. But the reality is, if you take somebody who's working during his or her regular 8 hours of work, they're working there, they may not do something else, but the city moves on. So there's no real direct additional cost to the city. So we can do all of that. I would just urge that we walk first before we really try to run in it.
So what I'm gathering is that there's going to be 2 events policy. For the first year, will not include special event costs in regards to staffing and lighting and water. And then after the first year, once we, like you said, once we crawl and once we get to stand on our own, then you're going to add that in. So now I'm back on my initial question in regards to the budget. If we, let's just say I'm back, we get the $1 a year, but that dollar is ate up by staff in the coming, so next year. So I'm assuming 2023. That year, once we add that special cost in, that's going to come out of my budget, my dollar, staff, payroll.
If I may answer that, if you go to, let me call it a fully cost allocated event, then by definition, where you might have said each commissioner has $4,000 to spend, you're now going to say each commissioner has $10,000 to spend, and the city won't spend more. It'll just come out of one budget and go into another budget.
But staff, my question is, will staff's salary, lights, water, anything that fixed costs, will that come out of my yearly budget for events? That's
the recommendation I'm hearing. And as I said, if you allocated each of yourselves $5,000 for FY20, FY22, and then we go to fully cost allocated in FY23, instead of allocating yourself $5,000 per, you might allocate each of you $15,000 per. And it wouldn't have any impact on the bottom line because it would just take expense out of one division, let's say out of Public Works division, and put it into your special events budget.
So in other words, payroll, fixed costs as payroll, lights, water, things that don't change won't affect our budget. It'll pretty much just be on paper. That's what you're saying. Because that's what it sounds like you're saying in layman's terms.
What I'm saying is it would not impact the bottom line of the city. What it would do would move expense out of one division, again, let's say Public Works, and put it into the entertainment budget. Bottom line, it would be a wash. Now, if there are overtime, that would be additional, and that would be a true additional cost to the city and truly needs to be taken into account at some point.
So the only way we should do it, like you said, is to utilize people that are actually on the clock at that time.
That's
correct.
That is the preferred treatment at all times. Yes, sir. We try to minimize overtime.
And that's in regards to the salary, but in the lights and the water, I know you talked about not getting that technical, but I guess I'm, like Commissioner Burke said, I'm a year ahead of time. That's going to come out of my budget. So
as the mayor said, I got a little carried away. That's probably a third order effect.
Okay, because you shot us straight in the future. All right.
It really, as to the mayor's point, it really ought to focus on labor cost compensation.
So I'm proposing that you reword it for now.
Yes, sir.
Because you said you're going to change the wording in the future, correct?
That is the direction that I understand, and we will certainly reflect that this is an initial way of doing business and the intent. But realistically, everything in this policy could change for a year from now. So yes, that would be part of the change, but you all may choose to change other things as well.
Okay, thank
Right.
you.
Just to be clear, so what exactly would be the language change? Because what I want to make sure we're clear on is if we're not going to do this for the year, then I would just say for the next 365 days, the implementation of this policy, this will be the case. And then afterwards, full cost allocation. And to me, I would just want to make sure we use the language within the operational audit that asks for a fiscal accounting of our special events. So do you have a proposed language now, or will we see this when it comes back up?
Yes, sir. I think very simply, what all I would say is this will be the cost methodology for FY22. For FY23, we'll move to a full cost allocation basis.
Okay, all right. So that was the first point. The other
Wait, Mr. Mayor, that's what he was placing special events costs? That's the language that he's placing that paragraph with?
yeah, so yeah, anybody got any
On page 2?
Go ahead. Yeah, page 2 of the events policy. I think that's what he's saying. Page
Special
2.
events costs. Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Commissioner Burke.
Okay, so I understand what we're trying to do now. We're trying to get something in place. We're trying to get something in place for the oversight committee in reference to our special events policy, right?
Yes, sir. That's the main focus of why we're having this conversation. Exactly. Operational audit in particular.
Right. Okay. That's all I have.
All right. So everybody cool with that language change? Okay. All right. So the other question that I have in regards to this, the only other place is it's 2 points. One says city produced event, special event not requiring city resources. The first is mentioned on page 1. The fourth bullet point under city produced events, unbudgeted special event not requiring city resources. And then it's mentioned again on page 2 on the second bullet point. And I'm trying to wrap my head around not requiring city resources. Now, I do understand that, for example, you mentioned as an example, the luncheon that's going on this Friday. I've known in the past many times, especially within the clerk's office, and this is not personal experience, I'm just giving insight, y'all. All right. It's like, the clerk's office would do a Halloween thing. They would do different festive events. And they would just do it out of themselves. They just would do it. It's not particularly a city event, but it's just something that staff like to do when they just do it. When you say city resources and city events, are you referring to something like that literally is just staff coming together to do something fun and honoring folk and taking a moment? Is that what we are referring to? Or something different where, I'm trying to figure out what do you mean by city not requiring city resources. I just see everything requiring city resources, except in those specific situations where it's you know what, I want to go out, sound like what I see Commissioner Burke and Vice Mayor doing. Hey, I just want to put together an event just for the staff. To me, that's kind of just them doing that, and they shouldn't be a problem, but you. Okay, maybe I'm not communicating.
No, sir, you are. But again,
Mr. Mayor, excuse me. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner Burke.
If that's something benefiting city employees, wouldn't that be considered a city event?
That's what I'm trying to get clarity on. So, Mr. Anderson, could you
Yes, sir.
clarify that? Because and if you could use that, because I see the clerk's office do it all the time, and I actually love those initiatives. But are they considered city events?
No, sir. Take a look at the word resources in the policy, because you'll never see that word again. It's going to go away, I promise. It's going to be replaced with external city expenditures. I've learned my lesson. I was too sloppy with the language, and I apologize. No, talking about a department event, that's not sponsored by these are really commission events. It might be what's in the budget. It might be commission initiated, but if a department does it, it's totally outside of anything that we're talking about here.
So, and that's the point I'm trying to make. Because if a department is able to do it, can a commission do it too?
Yeah.
Without having to, like, if we want to if we want to go in and let's say, hey, we want to celebrate parks employees, and during lunchtime we want to go in and just give them some food, and we got other people to do that. To me, I see that not being a city event, like, per se. And is that right or wrong? Am I confused on that point?
Yes, sir. I've put it up on the screen. This is where we tried to address that point. All that is asked, and maybe asking too much even, is just to let the city manager know the intention. And the only things that will flow from that is that the special events coordinator will look around, make sure it doesn't bump into anything else the city's doing. If it's something that might deserve promotion, the coordinator might make a recommendation to promote it in some way that's not being done now. And the third thing the coordinator would do, if Commissioner X wants to do it, he's going to make sure that the mayor and the other commissioners are equally aware of it. That's the full extent. Yes, it's a special event. It has almost no overhead attached to it.
Okay. All right. So then the other thing that you did mention, taking out resources. I'm not, I kind of don't like that idea. Talking about only external expenditures, because the operational audit specifically talks about a full cost analysis that also takes into consideration our internal resources.
Yes, sir.
So maybe if we can define what resources are in this policy, those definitions. I know many times in policies we have definitions for certain things. So if we can just define what resources are, I think that would clarify this to make it very simple for all of us. And yeah, that will be it. As long as it fits that operational audit piece, to me, that's what matters. All right, Mr. Anderson, and
yes, I'm sorry. I need to get some. It would be helpful for some guidance, because I sense, I mean, more than sense, that what we've got here for commission-initiated events, particularly when there's all the budget's been used up, is creating some discomfort. So if I can get some guidance on what would like to be seen and what should come out, that'd be extremely helpful.
Okay, Vice Mayor Williams, you have specific edits, because I think that's the source of it.
Well, first, I'm not feeling well, so that's probably why my face looks like this. But through the mayor, are we talking about slide number 6 that we're looking at here? Because is that where we are? I don't know.
No, ma'am. I think
the policy is probably what we want to look at, because I don't even have access to the slide. So when you say,
okay.
But
you say that.
I think this is the one we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
okay. I think I gave my suggestion earlier. It's twofold. First, so I'm looking at two different event policies. And I don't know, I'm troubled because we spent almost 3 hours the last meeting editing, revising, giving information back to Mr. Patterson on his policy. And now I come to this meeting and 25 pages come from another city that is totally different. And I'm looking, it's it's like I'm going back and forth. That does, that part concerns me because I think, I keep talking about one being one body. And if we had said, not even at that last meeting, but if an email had went out even through the clerk's office, please provide or do research before time, looking at, giving that, putting that on our laps as a commission, I would have been happy to have done that. But that was not offered. What was proffered was the Parks Department was doing an events policy. That's what we were told, not to, so I do understand our, we have that right and as commissioners to go out and do research, but that's not what we were asked to do. As a matter of fact, in the last workshop, I gave the city manager I gave him an idea so how we can all move forward with strategic planning. So I just think that, that part just really, I don't know, it gives me a little, and I don't even know the word, but that part really does a little bother me a little. I won't even lie. That bothers me because if we're one board, then a simple email for all of us to do the research would have been great, but that didn't happen. So, but I do know that, so, and it's clear that what's happening. But I do know that I am not in favor of commission approval required, including a budget amendment. What I am suggesting is that falls through the city manager's office and that the commission go have acts or go to the city manager's office for an amendment of the budget and also for approval of the budget. I'm not in agreement with this part. I don't want to be pigeonholed to asking approval. And again, I believe that this will satisfy one of the audit findings, because I'm not saying not to have a budget. I'm just saying I am not in agreement the way the budget is being asked to be required for the commission. So that's my piece.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving me the floor. I just want to clear up a few things because I heard a couple of comments that I felt was directed at some of the actions that I've taken on the DS. As it relates to budget amendments or budgeting, referencing special events, I just want to make it clear that the budget is a chartered responsibility of elected officials. We vote and approve on the budget every fiscal year, including budget amendments and any subsequent changes to the budgets. That's not under the purview of the city manager. That's not under the purview of the finance director. That is a responsibility that is solely responsibility of the commission. So, to hear statements to say that, I guess another commissioner wants to pigeonhole another commissioner for completing the event. I don't understand that.
No, I didn't say another. I said I don't want the commission.
Do I have the floor, Mr. Mayor, or don't I?
Yes, you do. You do.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to make that clear. So whenever something is being mentioned, and I guess the direction is that that's not the process, Mr. Mayor. That's how we deal with our finances, and that's how we move forward. I said it in its initial stages. I would not support any individual on this commission making arbitrary budget decisions. We all feel passionate about the various and different issues that we feel passionate about. 6 months ago, when our residents was struggling from COVID-19 and those troubles of the pandemic, I came before the commission, wanted $50,000, right, for a rental, mortgage, and food assistance. That didn't happen, right, even though the money was allocated in the budget. So for whatever reason. I didn't cry about it. I didn't point fingers at other commissioners and say, hey, this commissioner didn't think, because why? It's any budget decision is a decision of the board, period. So what I did, I went to Miami-Dade County and I fought for those resources, and I got 5 times what I asked the commission for. So when I hear those comments, Mr. Mayor, like, I have to clear it up, because one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to fight unapologetically for this community, and I'm not going to pigeonhole anybody else that does the same. But when it's a budget issue is an issue of this board and this board only, not any one commissioner arbitrarily. And that's in our charter. That's a charter responsibility of this board. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Through the mayor.
So just for context, I got you, Vice Mayor Williams. This is part of, I think, the understanding of this commission and how we work. Because there was two things you mentioned, Vice Mayor Williams, is the uncomfortability with, I guess, the legislation and how it was developed. Number one, every single legislative item that comes before us as a commission, we have the right and the ability to, and that's just standard. No one has to tell us anything. Our right is to speak with our city attorney, our city clerk, and our city manager to propose ideas, to make thoughts, what our thoughts are known. And then when we get together as a commission, whatever is the discussion item presented, we can share that with each other as a board. So anytime, and I want you and everyone to feel this way, that no matter what comes before this commission, whether it be from the manager, whether it be from any one of us, if we see it and we see a way that it can be improved, we have the right to share that thought, provide that information, and have management, if this is a management sponsored item, to take that into consideration. And if it's a commission sponsored item, we can ask management, legislative aid, clerk's office, attorney to advise us on what we can do to improve that item based upon our thoughts. And then at the commission meeting or during workshops like this, we can pull that information and present it to the sponsor of the item and to the rest of us so that we can talk. That's standard with us, period. So that's number one. And I want you to understand that, because that's part of your power as an elected official. And that's part of our power as an elected official, that we should know no matter what, because that helps us to move this forward. The second point is the hesitancy about commission approval. And I can understand that it's like, hey, I got to get somebody else to tell me whether or not I can do something. Where that comes from, that's literally exactly what the operational audit says we need to do. They literally put in there, we have to get commission approval for events. So we can be against it. That's very true, because anybody can tell us what we want to do, but we are the law here. So we can be against that, any recommendations from the oversight board, because there was a tradition of us being against that. We can be against the operational audit. We can be against any of that. That's our right as elected officials representing our community. But in particular, that specific line, commission approval, is what's recommended, and it's kind of standard throughout most municipalities. The way commissions and elected officials have gotten around that is a budget allocation for events. And that's what this policy calls for, is that if you got this, you got a certain amount of budget, you do your events. You might got to really say anything about it, but if you do more than that, then we come before the board and we discuss as a body to management, hey, we want to do more events, where we find the money from. And it won't necessarily, and this is the other key point that you mentioned, it won't necessarily have to come from somebody else's budget. as Mr. Anderson said, it can come from anywhere because we have a fixed amount of budget that we got to draw for. So if we exceed one budget, it has to come from somewhere in a budget amendment. That's why the proposal is to a budget amendment. So I hope that clarifies. That's what I was hoping to do. Clarifies where you are with that. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Interesting enough, and I guess my question to you, and then I'll before I ask that question, interesting enough, when I made that statement was to the entire commission. I guess if the shoe fits. However, what I said was commission approval required. I noticed that no other commissioner except one had a problem with my statement. The commissioner approval required is my issue. The city manager's office, and if you can let me know, the city manager's office is their responsibility, correct, to manage and administer the budget. So that's my question. So if I do, and I'll say that again, and I'll say it loud and proud, I have trepidation with asking the commission for approval for an event, because in my 3 months on the commission, I have not seen, and I do understand that, in 2 years, there's that one piece that, is the claim to fame. However, if I have not seen events, then there is my problem that I have.
Mr. Mayor?
So if you can answer that question, does the city manager's office, is it their responsibility to manage and administer the budget?
Madam Attorney, you want to answer that question?
I can answer that one, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's his responsibility to manage and administer the budget, but not to vote on it. That's what I said. If you want to quote something.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, I wasn't talking about voting on a budget. I'm talking about approval.
Excuse me. Come on, y'all. Let's maintain decorum. Everything is addressed to the chair. And as mayor, like let's do that. We got to get that. It's time. We got a lot of people waiting on us. So let's get to the specifics. And what we're trying to do is to make modifications to the language that was proposed by management on this. And right now, one of the topics of concern, we've dealt with the fiscal thing. The topic of concern is commission approval. So Vice Mayor Williams asked whether or not the city manager, and correct me if I'm wrong, has the right and the ability to make modifications to the budget without commission approval. Is that the question?
Okay, through the mayor, the wording says including budget amendment. It just says commission approval required. So that's the part where I'm asking, what's the difference? Are we saying commission approval required if it's for our events, whether it's budgeted or not budgeted? Because I'm saying that on both. But the part including budget amendment has me to believe that it's outside of an approval. So that's the part I'm trying to get clarity on, including budget amendment. So I understand that the commission, believe me, I'm very astute. The commission does vote on budget amendments, but this part, the front end says commission approval required. I would like to just get clarity on the front end.
All right, Madam Attorney, Madam Manager, Mr. Anderson, could someone provide that clarity? Mr. Anderson?
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Just for clarification. So the manager's office cannot make any movements to the budget if a dollar amount is exceeding a certain number. That has to be done through a budget amendment. What I'm hearing is that if there's one pot of money, and just say I throw $25,000 out there, And that $25,000 is out of a specific line item. And just say Commissioner, Vice Mayor uses $5,000 and let's say no other commissioner does the event, there's $20,000 left. Unless there's separate accounting codes for each commissioner, you know, I think I have the discretion to speak to other commissioners and say, hey, if you're going to use this dollar amount or not, and make internal adjustments there. If we're talking about that this is going to be separate line items or things broken out by commissioner and that accounting code and that requires a budget amendment, yes. But if it's just a solid dollar amount that we're working off of and there's monies left, I think if there is support and another commissioner is saying they're not using the funds, I think I can manage that. But my job is to manage and administer the budget only. I manage and administer a budget that is approved for by the commission. No, I don't have the authority to move monies from one line item to another line item. That has to be done through a budget amendment. It's not like that in all cities. It's like that in Opa-locka. But yeah, at the end of the day, to answer the question, just like the Commissioner Davis said, I do manage and administer the budget, a budget that's passed and by the commission with budget amendments and the actual budget itself.
And just to open up about the commissioner events, can I have the ability to share my screen?
Yes, sir.
So this is the operational audit finding. And if you see, this is for operational audit finding number 19. And one of the concerns that they expressly say is that specifically the city had not established policy procedures regarding special events. Affected policy should, for example, prescribe methods for determining the feasibility of such events and require city commission approval of each event. Now, if you go down to the recommendation, they literally say the city should establish policy procedures to require for each special event city commission approval and periodic evaluation, So yes, Vice Mayor, we can be completely against that. That's our prerogative as elected officials. We can, but that's the point that management and us and all of us trying to figure out is how that approval is put forth. And it looks like the way management is trying to, my computer is about to die, to capture that is number one, having a time in which all of us from parks and as commission, we talk about what events we want to do and we lay all those out. So if our thoughts are put into that, that's done. Second, another layer is that they're providing for when we have the ability to allocate funds for each of us, we can allocate those funds and we have our events too. And then third, to be able to even give us more room, what they've done is said that even if during the annual events, your event is not there, and you thought of something that was not part of the annual discussion, and you've already exceeded all your events. If you want to propose another event during that time, just present it to the commission, and we would do a fiscal analysis. And if everybody believes it's something important, we could do it. So that's the way that I guess the commission approval is they're trying to figure out how to address that concern about commission approval. So is that okay?
So, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner Taylor.
So pretty much, in other words, once we've zeroed out our budget, then and only then will we have to come towards the commission if we're trying to do another event after we zeroed out our budget, right?
After we zeroed out our budget and after that's outside of the annual events. And correct me if I'm wrong, management, if I'm not clear on that. Is that correct, Mr. Manager, Mr. Anathan?
Sir, that's spot on.
Okay.
Okay, and in regards to the annual events, is that something that we're glued to, or is, because if I don't want to have, I don't know, a book bag giveaway this year, am I stuck to that book bag giveaway, or is that just a global, I mean, it's just generic, that's what we do every year? Or am I hearing you right? Or whatever I'm having, that's what I'm having when I plan my event.
Yeah, so what is proposed is that we would discuss that as a group. Do we want to do a book bag giveaway? Do we want to do this? And that's a part of the annual events. And then if majority of us and also the Parks Department and everybody say, hey, we want to do a book bag event, then that's what everybody would do. But I think that brings up this other point that I don't think is addressed in this policy that I'm going to propose in a moment.
No,
is that clear?
I just want to make sure. So annual events and budgeted events, annual events and commission budgeted events are going to be two different things?
Can someone else explain?
Because I hear we keep throwing, Ms. Anthony, we keep saying that we're going to have certain events that we're going to do every year. But if I don't want to do those certain events, can I do something else? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes, sir. Mayor, thank you. No, the annual events are the schedule of events that the commission agrees to, hopefully in the May-June time period, gets embedded into the budget and becomes the basic statement of the majority of events that are going to be done during the year. If a particular commissioner doesn't like that event, or I'm sorry, wants to do an event, but does not get a consensus of the commission to support it in putting together the schedule for the annual events, what is proposed now, subject to your approval, is that each commissioner will have his or her own budget to spend a certain amount on possibly a project that commissioner or mayor couldn't sell to the entire commission. Does that make that clear?
Okay, so there's two proposals. One proposal is that we have an annual event budget. So those are the events that we're married to, that we're doing every year. And the other proposal is each commission has a certain amount of monies that's, I guess, attached to them that they can do their own events, correct?
Yes, sir. And when you say married, it doesn't mean it's the same events year after year. That's the purpose of the May review. You know, somebody raises the idea, we've never done something, and everybody else says that's a good idea. That will become part of the annual budget. So it's not that it is business as usual, same thing over and over again. It's just a schedule that's put together in the May time period that there's commission consensus. Is this the right thing to offer to the city?
Okay, so if, and I hope I'm not beating a dead horse, but if we go with the first proposal, that we have just a calendar of events, for sake of the argument, a calendar of events, a fixed calendar of events. If I wanted to veer off from that, I would have to get approval from the commission.
All right. So I think this is the confusion. There is not two separate proposals.
Okay.
Richard, it's not two separate proposals. It's both. That's what.
Oh, it is both. So we're going to have a calendar of events and then a certain amount of money that the commission can have for. Okay, see, that wasn't what was conveyed. Okay, all right, now I understand.
Yeah. And then on top of that, after you expend that budget, if you have personally expended that budget and you want to do more outside of the budget, you can come back and we can just say, yeah, this is what we want to do. And then it can be funded. So all of that. That's what has been proposed.
Okay, I understand now, because that's why I was a little shaky with, but okay, we got it. Thank you.
Through the mayor, I have a question. So I know we were saying that the Parks Department will put together, I'm just trying to go through this, put together a list of annual events. If my event doesn't make the list of annual events, I then would have to go into my pocket to subsidize my event. If I'm unable to do that, are we now saying that I would then have to go to the commission and get approval from the commission so that we can put on the event, amend the budget, put on the event? And then my next question is like, why would I need not the amendment of the event, but why wouldn't every commissioner approve each commissioner's event? Like, why even put that language there? Because that part makes me think that every commissioner may not approve every commissioner's event. And why wouldn't we?
So, all right, so let's take a step back. The annual events will be a discussion all of us have. So it's not that somebody else is proposing events that you have no say in.
No, I get that. I got that.
All right. Okay. So if you propose an event, and that's the thing, like majority of the time, we're going to say, yeah, we want to do these things. I doubt there's any event really. I've heard people's like, no, I'm completely against. So during that conversation, you have every right to share with the manager. And most likely during these, we have budget conversations. So the manager would literally sit, typically what happens in the budget process, the manager would put together a budget. It would come before each of us as commissioners, find out what we would like to do. What are our priorities? Which is part of this whole commission priorities things. It's more public, but it will still have that conversation. And then they propose that those events. So you will have an opportunity to talk to the manager, talk to whoever he brings in, whether it be Parks Department, all that budget, to talk about that event. And that can be put in that annual event. Then as a commission, we get together and we decide whether or not we're going to go with that list of events. So all of us can share those ideas. Now, if outside of those events that we already put forth, that all of us agreed on that we're going to do, and we want to do something else, that will come out of the proposed budget once we get that money later on. It's not now because we don't have an events budget. We're under financial oversight, so it's completely taken out. So once that's in place, then we'll propose that event. The only way in which you will not be able to have an event is if in consideration, after the consideration, your event wasn't part of the annual conversation. It was either taken out at that time, then you did events and you still didn't do the event you wanted to do. And now you're saying, okay, I still want to do it. And then the commission says, nah, we don't want to do that. That's the only time after it could take quite a bit to stop someone from having an event in that route. So is that clear?
Oh no, that's clear. I guess what so this last week, Commissioner Taylor had his virtual COVID event. Would that then need to would that come before the commission? Is that something that falls under a budgeted item? I mean, even though it was virtual, but staff was used. So, to at least to run the Zoom. So I'm just trying to connect. There are larger scale events, and then there are smaller scale events. So if that didn't come before the commission, then would Commissioner Taylor would have not been able to hold that event. So, I mean, are we talking about different levels of events? So I think that's the part where I'm not talking about an Arabian Night, because clearly an Arabian Night would eat up an entire budget to put that on. You would, need to hire a production company and all of that. But smaller scale events, would Commissioner Taylor, and I guess that's my question, would he have had to gone to the commission to get approval for that event that he put on?
So let me break this down and correct me if I'm wrong, all right? Commissioner Taylor can say, hey, y'all, I want to do 4 panels on just general topics. And that's a part of our annual events. And when it comes to it, that will be one of them. So that's one way it can make sure it happens. 2, under this conversation, if we say, nah, we don't want to do annual events, panel events, then Commissioner Taylor will have the ability under his budget to do that. Now, if you've already expended his budget, then yes, that's the time in which it will have to come before the commission.
So through the mayor, I don't think you answered my question.
Okay, go ahead, come on, Mr. Anderson.
Again, I created the problem by using the term resources rather than external expenses. I believe that the event that Commissioner Taylor had no external expenses that the city is going to have to pay for. That would be one that absolutely he could do it anytime he wants. Just notify the city manager, just so this special events coordinator can make sure there are no conflicts with anything else. So to answer your question, no, he would not have to have come back to the commission to get budget authority because he wasn't going to spend any money.
Thank you.
Now that part I am confused about, if that's the case. So staff were not, so the auditorium staff, resource staff being there, none of those were costs. Like none of those are costs?
Yes, sir. That's FY23. Not today. We're not doing full cost allocation until FY23. That would be cost allocation.
So you got to be clear about that because we're talking about policy. You can't sit up there and say, oh, it is not going to happen when in reality it will. It may not be during this 365 days that we're doing this precise allocation, but this policy is saying that that event would have to be a part of the annual budget, or is it not? Like, you know, that is something. And now, if that's the case, I think Vice Mayor is right on in pointing that out. Whether or not an event like that will be a part of a fiscal evaluation of events, period. And I think that is a good point there.
I would argue, was that to me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I would argue, because I think we were talking about rent of space and so forth, there is no value add in saying, I'm going to charge you for the use of a particular room, because it didn't cost the city anything. If we had to go out and rent a trailer so that it could be done there, definitely. But I would agree with you, labor, although I think it really should be overtime, but things like rental of space, back to my electricity, back to my water, I don't think that is part of the definition. It would not intend to be.
Okay, so the event was after hours.
Yeah.
All right. Were staff used to set up the event after hours?
Did it trigger overtime?
I'm not sure.
I'm not either.
But
I understand what you're saying.
After hours to set up the event, to break down the event, and were staff used during the event?
Again, I'm sorry.
And was that all within their time frame? And did they receive comp time for that? Or were they paid overtime for that?
I would answer is I don't know. I understand that's a rhetorical question.
The park staff, we had one park staff there. He accrued overtime for that.
So we know for parks. What about police, HR, IT, and public works? Well, parks, the parks, do you set up and break down events too?
Yes.
Was that okay? So no public works is involved in that.
No, it was a simple setup, and he set that up during his his allowed time. And then once the event starts, it's overtime. And then he breaks down at the end.
Exactly. And that's a cost. So what about the other participants? Was that part of cost?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Uh-huh.
For IT staff, we're both salary employees. So there's no overtime cost.
And there was no police outside, Mr. Mayor. So I can answer that question as well.
Salary as well.
Okay, so I know that the assistant chief and the HR director were there. Was that part of
Their salary.
time, the salary?
What's the salary? We volunteered to be there.
Got it. All right. So then let's get clear on this, because I think this is probably the sticking point that everyone's trying to figure out. And I know this is also what the oversight board and all that, like, because I think this is the point. And correct me if I'm wrong, Vice Mayor Williams or Commissioner Teller, if I get this incorrect. All right. What we're trying to figure out is whether or not events like that are after hours, that may use city resources, is that a part of us? Do we have to put that as a part of our annual events, our city budget events, or is that completely outside of fiscal accountability?
My turn.
Yes, Mr. Hampton.
Thank you.
Wait. Did I get the right question, y'all? Commissioner Vice Mayor Williams and Commissioner Teller. Did I get it right?
Can you repeat the question, Mr. Mayor?
Was the event that Commissioner Teller just had, is that a part of something that we will have to put as an annual event, our own event, or is that completely outside of those discussions and an event that we can just do at any point, people could just do at any point in time? That.
And Mr. Mayor, I think that's where it's sticky, and this is the sticky part of this policy for me, is there are times, and when we're talking about the women's luncheon tomorrow, for 2 months, no one even said anything on the commission that we were having, that the city does an annual women's event. So when nothing is said to me, or I don't hear anyone prior to any successors before me mention that we do a yearly event, then I'm going to step in the gap and do something that I don't see or have not heard that is done. So that part, if we're going to say women, that had to happen right away. That probably wouldn't have made well, I'm sure that would have now, but it wasn't there before. So COVID is now. COVID is not something we're going to put on a calendar every year. So if, and that was something that Commissioner Taylor thought that needed to happen for the residents of Opa-locka. And when you go back and look at his YouTube, he has over 800 views of that one video. So, if there are going to be times where we're going to put on events that we need to just step in and do events that pertains to what is happening, the issues right then and there, they can't necessarily go on a calendar ahead of time. So unless they were there already. So I'm saying stepping away from the calendar, if I need to step away from the calendar and someone calls me in Miami Gardens, someone calls me in North Miami and says, let's put on an event together in Opa-locka, that's not on the calendar. So I'm trying to understand, and I wholeheartedly agree with you, we must have an event calendar so that I don't have to do what we're doing, Commissioner Burke and I are doing tomorrow. If that was on the calendar, that would have been planned and already. So I'm just trying to understand how then if I'm doing a COVID forum, and I would agree, I think everybody, I'm sure Assistant Chief Jenkins, who was a part of the panel, would have said, I don't even want the overtime, because I'm sure she would have thought that that event was needed for our community. So I'm just trying to, like, how then do we pigeonhole Commissioner Taylor to, because Mr. Rodriguez and all of them were used so that he can't quickly have his event because it didn't make the calendar. And now the commission has to pivot, and now we have to vote on it. Now we have to look at we have to amend a budget to make sure we're paying staff overtime who are not technically overtime employers because they have salaries. I'm confused. And that's the part where I'm confused. So I think if we stay to, we're not going to be able to hit every part of, and I don't even know if that's the wording that's in the finding. I think the findings are talking about making sure we have a budget and that we're sticking to that budgetary, those budgetary constraints. But everything else is getting a little convoluted for me. And I hope I didn't confuse everyone, but that's where I am.
Actually, I can understand where you're coming from, Vice Mayor Williams. And one of the, I guess, challenges, especially as newly elected folk, is not knowing the process. And one of the things that is going on in Opa-locka is that we don't have a process. And that's the problem. And that's why right now you're like, yeah, but we just did this event and you trying to tell me that's wrong? and no, that's not what we're doing now, is setting vision for the future. So things that has been going on, this women's luncheon, Commissioner Taylor event, the COVID stuff, that we can make sure it happens properly where all of us are put into play. That's what we're doing, trying to figure out how that works now. Under this current policy, doing a women's lunch or doing a COVID event can happen like easily without any problems, and it can be much more organized and all that stuff. And all of us will know. That's what is on the table now. The policy does allow for that to happen. The only way it will not happen, which is, I guess, your concern, the only way it will not happen is if after multiple times, all of us say no, 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 no. And that means it takes at least 3 of us on a public setting to continue to say no, 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 which is highly unlikely.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
And I think that's what Vice Mayor has the issue. Why does it have to even come to the commission? I think that's what she's talking, because you said once we say no, 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 because a lot of the stuff, so the commission has to determine what we can and cannot do, because.
Yes, so we are the law in this city.
No. I got that part. I understand the logistics and the legislation of it, but it's the part of the actual event. So if I want to have a breakfast tomorrow, I have to come before the commission and get permission, because that's what you're saying now.
Mr. Mayor, if I may just.
But
hold on, Mr. Taylor, are you done?
No, and real quick, I'm sorry, Commissioner Davis. And what I gathered from everything that there is, and tell me if I'm wrong, that there's what you guys are proposing, what we all are proposing, that there's going to be a yearly calendar of events. And also in conjunction with that, we're also going to have a budget per commissioner. So let's just say we have 12 events that are on the calendar for the year, 1 per month, but I also have an allowance for my own personal events. So the COVID thing that I had the other day would come out of my personal allowance, versus the yearly calendar. Am I right? And I think that's what Mr. Bob was saying. And I think in regards to, you brought up the overtime does not matter right now. That would start to matter in FY23. So right now, and the water bill and all of the other stuff, is that what I'm hearing? I just want to make sure I'm correct.
From far as I understand, yes. If it's not also a part of panel events, like if we don't say, and I think, 'cause me personally, I think we should have panel events. So if we say we want to have a certain number of panel events, that can be a part of the annual budget. And that don't have to come out of your particular budget. But if there's something additional, then yeah, you do.
But if that panel event is already etched in stone, we know, like you said, panel event, we know that we're doing that every February from now until Jesus comes. A panel event in February, let's just say that. But if I want to do a separate panel event, that will come out of my allowance, correct? Or no?
Under these
That has nothing to do with what we already did. Huh?
That to me, that's what the policy allows for. Mr.
Okay.
Anderson, is that correct?
Yes, sir, exactly.
So I don't need, the only permission that I would need from, or not even permission, is to actually get with the events coordinator to ensure that there is no conflict in time, no conflict in dating in regards to the event that I'm having. Correct?
That's what the
So
policy.
I don't have to come.
If there are no external expenditures. If you're going to spend money and you've exhausted your individual allowance.
Okay.
Because when the budget was put together, they said we're going to spend $300,000 on various events, which are all part of the calendar. Then, and I'll make up the numbers, the budget also says we're going to allocate each commissioner or mayor $5,000. And again, those are just made up numbers. If that's what's been approved in the budget, if a commissioner spends the $5,000 and says, hey, I need to spend another $1,000, now you're outside of the approved budget. And unfortunately, we have to ask you to come back and get approval to spend the additional money. Unless, as the manager said, all of the commissioner allocations are lumped together into a single account. And then there's a little bit of fluidity to it. Does that help, or did I confuse you?
No, I'm not confused. I'm just trying to bring clarity that there's two different things. There's the annual events, and then there is the allowance per commissioner. And the only time that I guess permission is needed if we exhaust all of our, I guess, allowance.
Yes, sir.
Right. So once I run out of my money, that's when I have to come before the dais and beg for more. And that's when the commission can say yay or nay, we got it or we don't got it. Once I exhaust my allowance.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But I think that's the problem because it got lost in translation and delivery. And you pretty much lost us because it looked as if that we had to come before the commission for everything to get permission, but it was never explained correctly.
All right. I accept that.
So I think you have to break it down and explain it as if there's two different things. I think that's the issue that we're having. Because and Vice Mayor brought up the being pigeonholed because it doesn't, because it sounds like that it almost sounds like if you were trying to control. But I guess if you would have told us that we actually you're going to give us a budget to do our own events, I think we would be a little more receptive to it in the beginning, and we wouldn't have been here for 2 hours.
I apologize.
On the merry-go-round.
I understand exactly what you're saying. I apologize. I didn't make it clear the first time.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor, for that point of clarity. I actually heard it the first time when Mr. Anderson first brought it up, and I had that level of understanding. And I just wanted to kind of clear up the same issue. Of course, I had a problem with those expenditures, not going through the democratic process or having some sort of consensus from this commission. I alluded to earlier that it is a charter responsibility, and it is. We vote on the budget annually as well as periodic budget amendments throughout the year to reflect our financial position. So the point of clarity is we said we have commission sponsored events, which we vote on as a whole, as an entire commission. Then we have individual commissioner sponsored events that ultimately we all have the same allocated amount of budget that we can pull from to fund, in addition to whatever outside and in-kind resources we bring to subsidize the event. And then the third tier, what I'm hearing is those events that have no financial burden or cost on the city. So those are events that we, I guess, partner with an outside entity. We either have our own budget or we fundraise, or a third party or outside entity could bring their own budget and funds to the table to pull off an event. So in the case of the third scenario, which is where it doesn't involve any funds for the city. Well, actually the last two, the commission sponsored events, because that item is already budgeted. Therefore, no other line of approval would be needed by the commission. And then the third event, which, bypasses the whole city process, as you as an individual will go out and kind of get those resources and organize it. So I just want to have the point of clarity, Mr. Mayor, with the third tier that, that doesn't require any level of approval for the city. And I'll give you an example. So Vice Mayor Williams and Commissioner Burke, they organized a Women's Day luncheon event this week. I myself also had a Women's Day event, right? I didn't, market it through the city. I got with some business owners and put some resources together and ultimately honored them, right? So that's an event, right? I didn't, use any money from the city, any marketing, or no staff employees, no employee time, none of those type of scenarios. So if we want to proffer a project like that and we want to bring it before the commission, that item doesn't have to be brought before the commission for approval. As a point of clarification, that's my question.
Yeah, no, that would be what we talked about. It would be only notifying the city manager that was going to occur. And if for no other reason, the special events coordinator would ensure that all the other commissioners were aware of it, and also the department heads. So minimal involvement in the city, but there is a function just to make sure that your event is known by all the commissioners and all the department heads. That's the total involvement, no approvals.
Got it. And that was my impression before. And as the mayor alluded to, it's not that we didn't want to have events, right? Ultimately, the state has ultimately said that, we need an event policy to put in place, and that our previous practice of organizing special events wasn't proper. So ultimately, that was the reason why we, never had an event. I'm sure, we would have, but with a limited budget, being in financial oversight, and a commission that didn't necessarily agree to put an events policy in place. This isn't a new finding. This has been lingering for some time now. So I feel the need to kind of get it done. So let's get it done.
All right, so let's wrap up this conversation. Number one, I do want to acknowledge it is for all staff and everyone watching, it is very difficult to come to terms when we only can meet and talk during this time to find out what's going on. And I want to thank the commission for really sharing those thoughts and challenges so we can understand where each other are coming from. I do recognize that there is a lack of information about how we do what we do that needs to be addressed. And I hope that during this, matter of fact, Madam Clerk, has everyone been signed up for the elected officials training?
Are you talking about the Florida League of Cities?
Yes.
They've been provided with the options in terms of the dates that are available. So yes, they will be signed up for that.
Okay. All right. 'Cause that's very important. Because at the end of the day, while events traditionally looks at as though it's one person doing something, it's us as a body and as a city. And every single event is, and everything that we do as elected officials represents the whole city as a body. So all of us, whether one particular person spearheaded or not, it's the whole city, and it's all of us moving this forward as a community. And doing that, utilizing taxpayers' dollars that go to staff, that go to resources to do those things. So that's at the basis of how we move and operate as a commission. With that, I hear that the large majority, number one, of the policy is pretty on point. It didn't look as though there was much challenges with what was presented. The points of clarification that we would like to have as a commission, and correct me if I'm wrong, is number one, on page 2, the special events cost, to put in that language that provides that timeline for fiscal accountability of when that will go into effect. And then number 2, the clarity on the definition of city resources and what that entails. So those are the 2 things that I think, am I wrong on any of that, that all of us want to see this next draft have?
Mr. Mayor, I would also like to do my own research from other cities.
All right, so you're proposing that we also, okay, are you in agreement with those 2 points, number one?
I'm in agreement with those 2, yes.
Okay, all right, so then staff will bring that back up, but you also want to have the opportunity to have another session where you present additional information before this goes into final legislation. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'm here, Mr. Mayor. I would like to do my research and my sessions through Florida League of Cities, and then some, not only the required hours, but multiple hours that I've had on there. I would like to do my research for this policy, since now it changed to a different policy. But yes, I would like to do my research.
Okay, all right. So are we all in agreement to, let's see, Vice Mayor Williams wants to have another workshop to discuss this and bring up some more ideas. Is everybody else want that? Or yeah, does everybody else want to do that?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Burke.
When do we have to have this in place before the Auditor General come to town?
The Auditor Generals are in town now. They've started their work, and they'll be here for the next 5 to 7 months. So we don't, and Mr. Anthony, you can jump in. We don't know exactly when they'll get to the point to talk about this events policy. Okay. I think that's why we want to get it done now, so that when they do ask and inquire, it's done. And that means, what done means is that it's passed in a commission meeting. So, Mr. Anthony, you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think this is binary. I think as long as we can demonstrate that it's definitely moving forward, it's still being deliberated, they're going to be perfectly fine with it. Would it be nice if fully adopted? Yeah, but I still think that we're going to get pretty much full credit for a rather aggressive document that's moving in the right direction. So my long story short, I don't think it has to be adopted tomorrow. I mean, as you said, we're giving them information right now. They could ask for this policy tomorrow.
I was here during the last audit, y'all. So just
Sure.
give me personal insight. Personal insight. It will be in our best interest as a city to address as many of these operational findings and have it complete and done as quickly as possible. So that's another notch in something that we have fully addressed on the operational audit. So yeah, that's just what I say. And I say that because they directed the letter directly to the mayor and the commission. So the buck stops here with us. So if we want to decide whether or not we want to delay things and have not so good of a report, hey, that's our decision. But that's answering your question, Commissioner Burke.
I was thinking, with Vice Mayor Williams wanting to do more research, could we go ahead and work with this, and after the Auditor General's amend it?
Sure.
We can. We have that power. You are correct.
I mean, to go ahead and have something in place just in case they do ask for it. Go ahead and work with this, and let because I wanted to do some research as well. Let us do our research, and once we put this in place, and if we come up with something that we all agree on that we can work with, then we do have the power to amend what we've already passed, right?
All right. So I hear, correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Burke, you saying let's move now, do our research, and come back to it later? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it's going to hinder us with the Auditor General, if we could go ahead and move on this, and then we do our research and come back and amend the parts that we feel we can all agree on.
All right. So I got Vice Mayor Williams want to do research, and Olaf. Commissioner Burke want to move and continue to do research after. Commissioner Taylor, Commissioner Davis, where y'all at?
Mr. Mayor, to be honest, I'm ready to put this finding to bed. I mean, I've been ready to move. I yielded to the sentiments of my colleagues, which, I believe we were trying to work through a few issues with the policy. But I mean, to be quite frank, Mr. Mayor, at this point, I'm more in favor of moving on the policy. I for one, don't really have any challenges with the legislation as written. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Taylor.
Though I would like to do more research, but we've been beating this dead horse for a while now. So I would like to move forward with it as long as Mr. Anderson changes the language that he promised me he would change about the that part. We are good.
All right. So how about this? It's either, because right now it is March 18th. It most likely won't be on this upcoming agenda, so it will be on most likely the agenda on the 14th. If we do move like this, we do have which means we have at least 3 meetings on the books right now to address this before it comes before the commission. On the 24th, we could, on the mayor's report, commission report, you can present any thoughts that could be included in the events policy. On the 31st, we may be able to allocate some time to that. We could also call another workshop. And then also on the the 14th, I think this first meeting in April, at that point in time, we can have the legislation. So could Mr. Anathan, you can make those changes that was discussed on the special events costs and also the resources. Share that with us as a commission so that we have it. And then we'll put that as an agenda item for the first meeting in April. And if any one of us have any changes or thoughts, let's present that information at either one of those meetings for any consideration. Yes, no, that sound reasonable?
That sounds reasonable.
Okay, cool. All right, then let's move on. And let's close out. I know personally, the one thing I didn't get to was the selection of hosts for events. So we can talk about that later. But I think that's important with these annual events that we do. If we're going to do a women's lunch, if we're going to do a toy giveaway and all those things. I know that there are some of us that really like certain events and want to host that event. We had to have some policy to figure out how we decide that. So that's one thing. So if y'all can think about between the next meetings, how you think that will work. That's the only other thing that I want to put, not tonight, y'all, please, not tonight, but just put it in mind for in doing your own research, how we'll figure that part out. So with that, it sounds like we're in a pretty good place. Is there any other last remarks from management commission on this special events policy?
No comments from management.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Manager. And it sounds like commission is good. All right. This is the challenges working in the sunshine, but it's what we got to do as a commission to make sure our city right. And also for everyone involved, this is very difficult to set policy for the future and to get 5 people and also a whole management team all on the same page. So sometimes conversations take this time, but that's part of what we got to do as elected officials and government workers. So I want to thank everybody for their time, for being here tonight. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Moved by Commissioner Burke.
Second.
You want to stay here. Y'all want to stay here, right?
I said second, third, fourth.
5 hours. What's another hour?
We can do it all nighter.
Exactly. Might as well stay.
Get us out of here, y'all. All right. Motion seconded. This meeting adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.